Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first time on camera in 4.5 months. It's very nice to see you again. I'm coming out of the cocoon, to use an overwrought metaphor from nature. Hi, everyone. I am going to invite and introduce you to Dr. Catherine Hayhoe. She is someone I respect very deeply. I'm going to add her name to the live, and then I'll give you a little information about her. All right. So Catherine and I are going to have a discussion over the next 30 minutes or so about COP26 is, and try to talk about how we can all help. So Catherine Hayhoe is going to join us soon. She's a climate scientist and chief scientist for the Nature Conservancy. She's also the endowed professor in public policy and public law.
For some reason, I am not
And
seeing
Paul
Megan.
W. Horn Distinguished Professor at Texas Tech University. She's been named a United Nations Champion of the Earth and one of Time's 100 most influential people, and serves as the climate ambassador for the World Evangelical Alliance. Hello, Catherine. It's so good to see you.
You too.
Thank you so much for talking to me about this. It's a rare gift to have the opportunity to talk to someone as knowledgeable as you are about something that's so often overwhelming and difficult to understand.
Well, thank you. And I feel like this is an issue that people often assume, well, you just care about it because you're a scientist. But I care about it really for the same reasons you do, right? I mean, we're both parents. We both love to garden.
Yeah.
We both have things that we love in this world. And that's really why we care about climate change and why we're fighting for it.
Yeah, and that's what you talk about a lot in your wonderful book, Saving Us, that I just finished reading, and it helped me really understand a lot about communication with people and how my work in climate really relates to my work in the arts, because a lot of what we're trying to do is transmute our own personal experience through the medium that we're working in order to communicate something to other people or to connect what we're experiencing to what they're experiencing. And there's a really interesting part in your book about hope and how you maintain a sense of hope. Are you having trouble hearing me? You keep turning the...
Oh, I'm good. It was just a little low. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So you quoted Joanna Macy and psychologist Chris Johnstone, who said, active hope is a practice, like Tai Chi or gardening. It is something we do rather than have. First, we take in a clear view of reality. Second, we identify what we hope for. And third, we take steps to move ourselves or our situation in that direction. Rather than weighing our chances and proceeding only when we feel hopeful, we focus on our intention and let it be our guide. So when you take that second step and you identify what you hope for, what do you want to see happen with the global community in Glasgow?
I feel like that is what we're missing the most, because we know what we're running away from, but we don't know what we're running to, so to speak. And what we're running to is a better world for all of us. Because right now we have a world where our skies are choked with pollution that's responsible for almost 9 million premature deaths per year. That's double the number of COVID every year. We're worried about our kids growing up in a world that's increasingly insecure. We have $1 billion weather and climate disaster happening in the United States now every 18 days on average. 18 days. It used to be 82 days, when you and I were our kids' age. So what are we running towards? We're running towards a better, safer, healthier future. where everybody has electricity from the sun and the wind, and we have walkable green cities, and we have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink and enough food to eat. That's what we're running towards. And climate change is almost like the hurdle we have to get over to get to that better future. So I'm going to Glasgow next week with all the different countries in the world to talk about how do we get over that hurdle. And there's two big things that have to happen there. First of all of the rich countries that produce a ton of carbon emissions have to up their ambition. I think of it like a global potluck where everybody's bringing a different dish, and you have to have enough dishes on the table to keep global warming below 2 degrees and 1.5 degrees Celsius if we can. And right now we have some countries showing up with a old fish finger from the back of the freezer. It's like, that's not enough for a potluck. And then you have another country showing up with a fresh baked pie, and you cut into it and it's full of hot air. And then you have a couple of countries like Costa Rica and Bhutan showing up with this beautiful pasta salad with fresh veggies and homemade dressing. And you're like, everybody needs to bring something like that.
So who are the fish finger countries? I mean, and how I have followers from South America, from the Middle East. I was actually, because of the way you described how to communicate here, I was looking at the people on Instagram who do follow me and where they come from. And it really is a large global community, Tehran, Sao Paulo. So speak to that, to them. What can they do right now from their position? I remember the first ever advice that you gave me when I called on you because I was so confused by all of this. You said, grow where you're planted. Mm-hmm. And we happened to be sitting in a windowless room at the time, so I thought the metaphor was really interesting. I was like, well, the first thing I need to do is to get out of this windowless room.
That's right, I remember that.
Find some sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going on, particularly South America and the United States, and Brazil and the United States, because those are the people who follow me the most.
Okay, and
the people here.
I can see that in the comments. That's fantastic. I'm seeing United States, Israel, Iran, and many other places. And just so people know, Turkey, there we go. I'm Canadian myself. When I was young, I grew up in South America, living in Colombia, and now I live in Texas, which is a whole different country. So the laggards, the ones who are bringing the fish finger from the back of the freezer, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the ones who are bringing that giant steaming fresh looking pie, but we're not sure what's in it yet, that would be the United States, which is why it's so important right now to call your elected officials if you live in the US to say, we need this legislation passed that they're considering right now. And then again, countries that are really doing the right thing are countries that might surprise you, like the Gambia and Bhutan and Costa Rica. And then most other countries are sort of in the middle ground there. They're bringing something that's respectable, but it's not enough. So there's another half to it, though. The other half is only a handful of countries have produced most of the carbon pollution that's building up in the atmosphere, wrapping an extra blanket around the planet, causing it to warm. The 3.5 billion poorest people in the world have produced 7% of emissions. 7%. Yet they are bearing the brunt of the impacts. So we are seeing droughts getting stronger and longer, especially in places like the Middle East. The Madagascar is experiencing one right now, the Western United States. We are seeing heavy downpours getting more intense and more frequent. Cyclones, typhoons, and hurricanes are stronger and dumping a lot more rain. And of course, sea level is rising as well. So the other half of this meeting in Glasgow that's coming up next week is called climate finance, which is sort of a wonky term for all of the rich countries who produced all the pollution promise to pay into this fund to help the low-income countries develop without carbon emissions and build resilience to the impacts they can't avoid. And there, the United States has only contributed 20% of what it promised. My home country of Canada, 40%. Norway is the only rich country that's actually contributed everything they promised.
Okay, so you said call your elected officials, and I want to give some actionable advice for people who want to go from this live and actually pick up the phone or write an email and do something. Where do you think that they should go? Do you think that they should work within their municipalities, inside their local governments? What are things that they can do to actually help to support their elected officials? Because I think in activism we often use the word demand, but I actually think that what you create is support, like a rising tide for your politicians to actually enact your will, because they can't do anything on your behalf unless they hear from you and unless your community actually demands it, right? Demands or supports them in that action.
I love that. It's sort of the image of a surfer. Like the elected official is the surfer surfing the wave,
100%.
but the wave is made of public opinion.
Yes, yes.
We can do that
So,
wherever we are. And I love that I'm seeing all of these different people pop up from all over the world. So often we don't realize that at the level, if you live in a city, cities can do so much. They can invest in public transportation, in building standards. They can invest in clean water. They can help with heat wave prevention and greening the city with more trees and parks. There's so many things cities can do. So definitely talk to your city and even your neighborhood. Talk to the place where you live, the province or department or state that you live in. And also talk to your elected officials at the national level. If you live in a democratic society where you vote for people, that's something that you can do. And you're right, I don't like the word demand, because really most, not all, but most politicians, they actually do want to do what's right for their city or for their region, but their perspective might just be a bit different than ours. And when we can start with something we have in common, and that's what the book is all about, starting with something that we have in common, connect the dots to how climate change affects it, and talk about something positive and constructive, an action that we could take together that would make all of our lives better. That's how change happens.
right. So I'm talking to Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, climate scientist and author of Saving Us. And she's helping us to just understand what's happening right now in global politics and our international relationships that are going to help just us as individuals and future generations, our children. Maybe you have a niece that you love or a grandchild. And what happens in Glasgow next week, and what Catherine is working to support, is a movement toward a better future for all of them. So I want to shift now to another part of your book where you talk about how we can make the most change as individuals, and you say start by talking about it. And I think that you have some good news for us, because for a long time I thought that I needed to convince people who were just adamant about denying climate. Now, how many people are there out there that do that, and can you convince them, and should we even waste our time?
There aren't that many. So even in the United States, where you and I both live, that has the largest number of these people, it's only 7%. I'm from Canada. We're maybe about 5 or 6% there. The UK, maybe 4 or 3% there. So it's not that many, but they're really loud. And they're often on social media, not Instagram. People are nice on Instagram, but on Twitter or Facebook, we see a lot of those people. But you know what? We don't have to convince them, because they're just a small part of the population. Any country in the world, any country, most of us are worried about climate change. In the United States, 70% of people are worried. In Canada and the UK, it's more like 75%. In places like Turkey or Vietnam, it's more like 80, 85%. People are already worried about this, most people, but we don't know what to do. We think, I'm just one person. What can I do? I'm not a CEO or a president, or people might think, I'm not Megan Boone. So what can I do?
I still feel that way. What can I do?
And I do too, and I'm a scientist. But that's why I realized that using our voice, it's the way the world changes. When you look at any major change that has happened around the world in the last 200 years, it didn't begin when a big, rich, famous person rolled out of bed one morning and decided the world had to be different. It began when somebody very ordinary, not special or famous, realized the world could and should be different, and they started to use their voice to talk about it and to join with others. And we know the names of just a few of those people. We know the name of Nelson Mandela, but who were the thousands of people who marched with him, who shared his vision, who advocated for the change that now South Africa has seen?
And that
we don't even know their names,
that
but they did it.
Listening today, right? That could be anyone listening today. So I always felt like perhaps I was deficient because I don't have the same talents that you do, Catherine. I have different talents. And whenever I would have a conversation with somebody, I wasn't able to bring up the encyclopedic recall of facts that I knew and I had read and had been alarming to me, but it just wasn't a part of how my makeup was or how I communicated. But I was really interested in, I actually discovered later on that I was able to use my strengths and that the things that I wasn't good at didn't really matter that much as long as I put who I was to task and to support my cause. But you said social scientist Dan Kahan, did I pronounce that right? Dan Kahan?
I think it's Kahan, but
Kahan
yes.
has developed a measure he called ordinary science intelligence. It measures how capable people are of understanding data, statistics, probabilities, and scientific results. Disturbingly, Kahan and colleagues found that people with the highest degree of scientific literacy, that is, who were best able to understand science, were not most concerned about climate change. Rather, they were the ones among whom cultural polarization was greatest. In other words, the more broadly scientifically literate you are, the more, not less, likely it is that your political identity dictates your opinions on polarized issues like climate change. So let's talk about identity, who we are, our talents, and how we can bring them to this cause, okay? Let's do a little fire round, right? I'm going to talk about somebody's identity, who they are, what they like, and you're going to tell me from your scientific perspective how climate change is going to affect them. I'm talking to Catherine Hayhoe, author of Saving Us, about what she's about to do at COP26 to support the international community of human beings who maybe like winter sports.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like winter sports too. And if you like winter sports, you require snow and ice. Well, the winters are warming, and in some places, they're warming faster than any other season. So I'm from Canada. Our backyard hockey rink season is shrinking to the point where many people can't have it. Our outdoor ice rinks are melting. The snow season for skiing is getting shorter and shorter. So if you are a winter athlete and you care at all about snow and ice, then you already care about climate change, even if you don't realize it.
And if you want your Nelson Mandela, you can go to Protect Our Winters and follow them. Okay, say you're somebody who likes, you're a parent or a grandparent, and you love your children or your grandchildren.
Well, that's huge because our children are inheriting the world that we leave them. And if we don't fix climate change, it's not the planet that's at risk. It's not about saving the planet. The planet will still be going around the sun long after we're gone. What's at risk is human civilization as we know it. Whether we have water coming out of the tap, if we're fortunate enough to already have that, or if we're able to get it if we don't. Whether we have access to electricity, whether we have a stable food source and a safe place to live. That is what is at stake with climate change. And that is what we want for our children, all of them. We want a safe, stable world for them to live in, and we can't get there without fixing climate change.
And there's Moms Clean Air Force. I know you have a couple of other organizations that you mentioned in your book.
Science Moms.
Yeah, Science Moms. Okay, just a couple more. People who love to go to the beach. What's happening to the beaches right now?
Well, what's happening is sea level is rising twice as fast now as it was 25 years ago. And as sea level rises, what's happening to our beaches? They're going underwater. In some places, like where I go with my in-laws for vacation on the east coast of the United States, they're already dredging up sand from offshore and bringing it and dumping it on the beach. And then they have to do it again and again and again. So if we love beach vacations, we care about climate change, even if we don't realize it, because if we don't fix it, most of the world's beaches will be gone.
Okay, well, I'm talking to Catherine Hayhoe, author of Saving Us. This is pretty daunting. It can cause people, I just know how human psychology works a little bit from my line of work, and it can cause people to want to push it into the back corner, focus on something else. It just feels overwhelming and like something that you can't face all the time. and it's incredibly stressful. And I think that there are all of these are reasons that people try to sort of skirt around the issue, not talk about it, have defenses against it, but that's not going to actually make it go away, right?
No. And in fact, we just saw a defense right here in the chat. Somebody said, who cares about climate change? Well, that's often our defense. Because if we feel like it's this huge global issue, but there's nothing we can do about it, then our defense mechanism is to say, well, who cares? But here's the reality. If you're a human being living on planet Earth, which I think most people listening to this are, I don't know if anybody's listening from the International Space Station. If you're a human being living on Earth, then you have every reason to care about climate change, because it literally affects the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat. It affects everyone, everything, and everywhere that we love. And that's actually something really interesting, because often if we are already care about climate change and we know it, we think, I have to convince somebody else to care for the same reason I do. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing I've learned is we don't have to do that. We just have to figure out why they would care. Are they, like we talked about, are they a parent, a gardener, a skier? Are they somebody who has military service? The military calls climate change a threat multiplier. Are they somebody who enjoys fishing or hiking? Are they somebody who lives in a certain place where wildfires are getting bigger or cyclones or hurricanes are getting stronger? No matter who we are, we already have every reason to care. And when we talk to people, we just have to figure out what do they already care about that we can then connect the issue to. But we can't stop there. We have to talk about positive solutions. And so often we feel like, and I had a few people saying this to me on Twitter just this morning, I'm not the president of a country, so what can I do? I can't do anything. And to that, I say that's absolutely untrue. The only reason the world has changed before is, again, not because presidents decided it had to. It was because people decided it had to. And enough people got together that the politicians had to listen to them. That's how the world has already changed before. And the examples, I mean, let's think, 200 years ago, women couldn't vote.
Yeah.
70 years ago in the United States, people were segregated by the color of their skin. 30 years ago in South Africa, the same thing. We have seen massive changes in political regimes, in human rights issues, and it all began when people used their voice. And so you and I are both part of Oxfam, which is an organization that invests especially in women and children in developing countries and helping people get the resources they need so that they can feed their families, they can have access to clean water, basic health care, and they can use their voices to advocate for a better future for themselves and for their families and for the places and people they love. That's how we change the world.
I've included a link in my bio that you can follow to sign a petition to support Biden in making decisions for investment, financial investment in the communities on this planet that have done the least to impact climate catastrophe, but are going to be the most impacted by it. And those impacts are devastating. They're just devastating. They take everything. So what we can do, a country who has, believe it or not, even after a year of COVID and the difficulties that we've faced, we still have a lot more to give than these countries have when we come to the table in negotiations like this. And I think we're at this unique time in history where we really, as a community in the United States, and I know around the world, but I'm speaking from my vantage point because that's the only one we can really speak from, we were really brought to our knees by the experiences that we had over the last year. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when you have suffered so much to look at the world and say, how can I help? Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think that those times open you up to understanding the suffering of communities that you've never met or seen and have no connection to, except for that experience, the humbling, difficult, challenging experiences that we've had over the last year. So my hope is that we're going into Glasgow over the next week, bringing all of that information that we've gathered through the COVID crisis to the environmental crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And so go to my bio and sign that petition for Oxfam. And I wanted to also share some other beautiful things from Saving Us, because this really is a great book. I mean, if you feel like you are struggling, and you must be struggling to know exactly what to do in this time in history when climate is such a confounding issue that's so much bigger than us and so difficult to really grasp on a daily basis, so profound. This really gives you the tools and the mindset that Catherine has worked a lifetime to really gain for herself, you know, and she's really dedicated herself to understanding it. She went through and got a PhD in the education system, but I know that on a daily basis, she's really dedicated herself to that. And so I want to read a little part about why action empowers from your book. What builds our sense of efficacy when it comes to climate action? Research is still emerging, but the bottom line is pretty intuitive, which I like. Sorry to interrupt the reading.
Commentary is welcome.
When you hear or see or learn about what the real solutions look like and how many of them are already being implemented or will be in the near future, that can increase your efficacy. And when you see someone else do something or find out about something you can do in your personal life, or in the case, I read too far. Okay, so let's talk about that. So increasing your efficacy by seeing what others are doing. So Catherine, I thought that we could maybe point to people in our community or people that we know who are doing things that are effective so that we can increase our own efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
absolutely.
So how about you? And you start.
Okay. So someone asked, where do you get the book? And that's a good question. If you live in North America or Europe or the UK, you can get it in any bookstore. If you live anywhere else, you can get it as an ebook or as a book that you listen to. And I actually read it myself. So yes. So you can get it anywhere in the world, but just the print copy in Europe, the UK, and North America for right now. So what are things that people are doing? I live in a place that might surprise people. I live in Texas, which is, of course, the home of the oil and gas industry in the United States. And so people often say, well, what hope do you see in Texas? I see a lot. 23% of Texas's energy now comes from clean energy, the wind and the sun. It produces more wind energy than any other state in the whole United States. They have entire cities like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, that have climate action plans that are being powered by clean energy. If the world could change in Texas, I feel like it could anywhere, and that's what's happening. Around the whole world, last year, 90% of new energy was clean energy. Wind energy, solar energy, and others. 90% last year around the whole world. And in my book, one of my favorite stories is not from the United States. It's from sub-Saharan Africa, Tanzania, where there's this great organization called Solar Sisters that invests in women who need to support their families. It offers them training and jobs selling solar lanterns, solar panels, solar technology that does not require coal or gas or oil or electricity. All you do is you put it out in the sun and it can power your home, it can charge your cell phone. So I just love the fact that empowering women and girls is a big part of climate solutions, and it's a big way that we can address equity at the same time. And that can happen right here where you live, as well as on the other side of the world, wherever that is. So give me some of your favorite examples now.
Okay, great. So I generally don't have statistics in my back pocket or percentages or anything. That's so impressive. But I'll tell you stories.
Yes,
that's what I do.
And stories are great. As I talk about in the book, when you tell a story, people who are listening, your brain waves synchronize with hers, literally, when she tells you a story. So get ready. It's pretty cool.
Good. And also in the theater, they've noticed that when people get really engaged in the play, their heart rates are synchronized as well. So I feel ready for this. Okay. Not to build this up too much, but when I was feeling really hopeless, probably the most hopeless I've felt about the climate issue since I learned about it about 6 or 7 years ago. I was in my house and I got a call from a lobbyist friend, Jeremy Churston, who works at Riverkeeper, an organization that was established in the 1960s, decades before I was born. And he said, we want you to come talk to the press at a conference to support a new bill that we're trying to get through in our local government in New York, where I live. And I thought, what difference can I make? I felt like every speech I'd given was just me blowing hot air. Every meeting I'd had meant nothing. And then I thought maybe I should just spend the day just like with my daughter and my husband and enjoy the life that I have. But I took one look at my daughter and it reminded me that she's going to have a lot more to contend with than I do now. So I should go and I should speak at this presser. And when I got there, I had no idea what I was going to say. I was so scared. I had prepared ideas and remarks, but it didn't really come together yet. Makers and people and lobbyists and people get up there and speak, and they were all speaking science speak. They were all speaking political speak. And I realized that I had to speak from my own experience. And so I went up to the podium and I said, I came to speak today because I was invited because I'm a public figure, but I decided I needed to be here because I represent a group of people who are not often invited to these things. I represent a working mother who understands the implication of our environmental crisis and what that means for my daughter's future. And you have stalled for too long in taking action. And I said, Governor Andrew Cuomo, now is your opportunity to be the leader that women like me need you to be. And I went on to talk about, and a statistic came up in my mind. I was so happy right when I needed it. I was like, oh, that was definitely not me. 70% of your constituents know that the climate crisis is real. And they quoted me on NPR right next to Cuomo talking his political speak. And I felt so proud and like I had done something. And I know that I wasn't the reason that that passed. It was all the 20 different 501c3s on the bill who had supported it, who had lobbied for it. But I participated in it. And it was a better life for me to live than it would have been if I hadn't.
That is so beautiful. I am sure that my brainwaves were synchronized there.
Wonderful. So I also synchronized my brainwaves with your beautiful book, Saving Us. If you want to know where to get it, Catherine mentioned it about 5 or 10 minutes ago in this live, but you can get it at your local bookstore, which we prefer here in the United States. You can get the ebook internationally. And it was just lovely talking to you today. We all on this live send you all of our hopes and dreams as you go into COP26 in Glasgow, and you help our leaders to support the interest of all of humanity.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for your amazing comments. People have been joining us from all around the world and sharing their experience, like less snow in Afghanistan. Is that climate change? Yes. Stronger hurricanes and cyclones, that's climate change too. Wildfires burning greater area in Australia, in California, in Greece, that's climate change. To care about this issue, you only have to be one thing, and you are a human living on planet Earth. We all care about this together. We're all fighting for it because of who we are and what we love. And thank you so much for everybody who's listened. Thank you, Megan, for hosting this, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Catherine. Bye-bye. Hope to see you soon.